It's one thing for an anonymous caller to join a late-night radio show and claim that he is a time traveler. It is another thing altogether for a highly decorated, knighted officer of the British Empire, supported by government documentation, to speak of his flight into the future and his subsequent return. The fascinating true story of Sir Robert Victor Goddard concerns an Air Marshal who passed through a temporal vortex in the sky. The military career of Victor Goddard spanned 41 years of service. He began as a midshipman in the Royal Navy at the start of World War I. By 1915, Goddard had joined the Royal Naval Air Service. In the Battle of the Somme, over 3 million men fought, and 1 million of them were either wounded or perished. The battle lasted almost 6 months, and by its end, the Allies had succeeded in advancing their front line by a distance of about 6 miles. The reliability of the biplane was so poor that the odds of suffering mechanical failure was almost as high as the odds of getting shot down by the enemy. Across the English Channel, in the northernmost corner of France, young Goddard began his air career flying reconnaissance over the Somme. At the end of his career, 10 years after the next World War, he had received so many medals from so many nations that there was not enough room for them on a regulation uniform. In 1934, Air Marshal Goddard was relaxing between wars. He took a day trip by automobile to visit in Scotland the landing field at Drem, one of those from which he had flown during the Great War. He knew the airfield was no longer maintained by the military and was curious as to its current suitability. He found the buildings in wretched disrepair. The roof of the officers' mess was falling in. A farmer was using one hangar as a barn for his cattle. Another hangar was used as storage space for bales of hay. The field itself was now crisscrossed with fences of barbed wire to keep grazing sheep separated from grazing cows. The next day, the Air Marshal was flying a Hawker Hart in the same vicinity, while traveling from Edinburgh to Andover, England. He was suddenly enveloped by cloud and heavy rain. Goddard admits to losing control of his plane, plunging 8,000 feet in less than a minute. After regaining control, freeing his aircraft from a death spiral, the fog was nowhere to be seen, and the earth was bathed in a heavenly sunlight. He expected soon to pass over the airfield at Drem, and he did. But looking down, it was not at all as he remembered from the previous day. The airfield was no longer fenced. The grass was evenly cut, and there was no livestock in sight. It appeared the area around the hangars was paved with fresh tarmac, and the hangars themselves bore shiny roofs in good repair, brightly reflecting the sun. Goddard was unfamiliar with the bright blue uniforms he saw worn by the mechanics below. But he was more surprised to see more than one odd-looking airplane on the field. Having but one pair of wings, rather than two. The monoplanes were all painted the same color in military fashion, although he had never known the Air Corps to paint their planes yellow. The men below did not look up, even though Goddard was flying only 50 feet over the roofs of their hangars. Then the sunshine disappeared, and his Hawker heart flew back into the mist and dark rain. 4 years later, the Drem airfield was rebuilt. It became a training school for UK military flyers. Blue overalls were issued as the new uniform for mechanics. And the new training aircraft, which had only one pair of wings, were all painted bright yellow. All the details matched exactly the vision of the future afforded to Victor Goddard. This was confirmed by the report he filed 4 years earlier on his arrival at Andover.
Private Henry Johnson was born in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He later moved to New York. He joined the Army in 1917 as a teenager, and he was assigned to an all-black National Guard unit that would later become known as the 369th Infantry Regiment, also known as the Harlem Hellfighters. In a bitterly fought battle in May 1918, Johnson and one of his fellow soldiers were cut off and surrounded by a large German raiding party. Wounded by a shower of grenades thrown by the attacking Germans, Johnson's comrade was being dragged off by the Germans into captivity. Disregarding his own injuries, Private Johnson leapt up, smashed one of the Germans on the head with his rifle butt, drew a bolo knife, plunged it into the skull of a German and into the stomach of another. A hellfighter indeed. And then he threw grenades at the rest of the enemy until they withdrew.